Hello, my name is Leticia Flores, and today I'm your host for OurVentura TV. We have Karen Banfield, author of Tarantula, Fudge and Altered Reality, and we'll be speaking on Toastmasters, Ojai Valley Toastmasters. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Leticia.
What brought you to Toastmasters?
Oh, it was very interesting. I do some speech coaching, and I had a friend named Lori who called me up and asked me to help her with a speech. And her speech was about an hour long, and I said, that's great. And I said, how long exactly do you have to give it? And she said, 5 minutes. And so we spent a lot of time just getting the best part of the speech and making it short. And so I showed up at 6:30 in the morning to see how she did. And she did beautifully. And then they surprised me and gave me one of their table topics to see how I would speak. And I was shaking, and I thought, wow, what a surprise. Because I've spent a lot of years in the performing arts, and I didn't know that I would be nervous. And I thought, I really need this experience. And they asked me to come back, and I thought, I think it's a good idea. I had just written my book, Tarantulas, Fudge and Altered Reality, and I'd written books before, but I didn't really believe in them. They really weren't as close to my heart. And I thought I really want to do a good job with this book. And so I went with the idea that I would practice stories from the books, because they're fairly short stories, and learn to speak in front of an audience so that I could really convey the message of the book. And it's worked beautifully. I had to work through a lot of fear in the beginning. I had a lot of fear about it because I just wasn't used to such an intimate setting. But then when I began to do it, it was really amazing for me and so very helpful.
Well, I'm glad you came to Toastmasters. Can you please tell us one of your stories from the book?
Oh, I'd love to. This is a story that most people, is their favorite. And I think it touches most people's hearts because it's about my grandmother, and most people can relate to that. It goes like this. I didn't see much of my grandmother as an adult because she lived on the East Coast and I lived on the West. But when she was 96 years of age, I went to see her. And she lived above my aunt and uncle's farmhouse. She would sit in an old rocking chair and look out this window into a cornfield. And she'd rock back and forth, and she said, Karen, I want you to pray that I die. My husband is gone, my friends are gone, my quality of life is gone. I need you to pray that I die. And I might have nodded my head yes, but I know I didn't, because I didn't know how to make a prayer like that at that time. The next time I saw my grandmother, she was 102 years old. She was still living in the same place. My father was tending her. And he said, well, you can go in and see her if you want, but she doesn't really talk, she doesn't really eat. She's just laying in bed, waiting to die. And I said, yeah, I want to go see her. And so I pushed against the wooden door, and I felt the familiar resistance of the glass knob as I opened the door and let myself into her room. And I was so aware of leaving my reality behind and entering the nothingness of hers. The room was very dimly lit, and off to my left I could see her bureau. And on the right-hand side were her aprons. There was a jewelry box. And I don't know if you remember those wonderful lace hankies that women used to use. They had embroidery, and they were so sweet. How anyone ever blew their nose in those wonderful works of art, I will not know.
I agree.
And my grandmother had them all neatly ironed and piled up, and they were at the other end of her bureau, gathering dust. So I went to the window and I opened the curtains, and then I went around and I sat by her bed and began to talk with her. And it was as my father had said, she didn't hear a word. But I had brought my flute. And so I unsnapped the case and I assembled the flute. I felt the cold metal of it against my lips. And I blew a long, loud note. And she startled like this. And I went, good, I have her. So then I played a whole song. And when I did, she slowly turned towards me. And I saw this wonderful smile crossing her face. And I reached out and I just traced that smile with my finger so she knew that I could see her smile. And then I played and played and played for so long until my fingers really couldn't play anymore. So I disassembled my flute, I snapped it in the case, and then she spoke to me for the first time. She said, Karen, don't go. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? She can't hear me when I talk. I can't play anymore. And so I decided to put the flute on the bureau, and then I pulled back the covers and I got in bed with her. She was so thin and so fragile. She was like a skeleton in a nightdress. And I held her really close. And I put my mouth about this close to her ear, and I began to sing her favorite song. And at that time, her song was A Bicycle Built for Two. So I sang the first verse, and then she surprised me. And she began to sing with me. And I cannot describe to you the quality of her voice, because she had clearly left her body and was living in another dimension. But she decided to celebrate her life one more time. So she pulled her spirit back and wrapped her love of music around her like a long-lost blanket. And we sang, and I sang every song that I knew that she knew. And then I just started singing Christmas carols because I didn't know what else to do. And when I thought she was asleep, I grabbed my flute and I walked out the door. And I was visiting with my father. And pretty soon he said, Karen, do you hear that? And I went, hear what? And he said, come here. So I went over by the door, and she was in there singing all by herself. And my father said, I have never heard her do that. And it really touched me. This is the last song I heard her sing, and I'd like to sing it for you, but I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine that it's not my voice that you're hearing, but it's the voice of a woman who's 102 years old.
Okay.
From this valley, they say, you are going. I will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile, for they say you are taking the sunshine that brightened my path for a while. And that is how I said goodbye to my grandmother.
Wow, Karen, thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to hear that story again. I know when you said it at Toastmasters, it was wonderful. It touched my heart, and it touched my heart again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's how your book, it's full of stories like that. When I bought your book, I kept reading every story. I would even get up in the middle of the night because it kept one story after another. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. This started out as a blog. I was asked to write a blog to sell the book before this, and I had no idea what a blog was. And so I went online and I thought, what is this about? And I thought the only thing I'm an expert on really is my own life. And so I began to just take little excerpts from my life, and people said, please make it into a book. And I thought, no, because it's not a regular memoir, it's not a regular book. And they asked me for so long, I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. and people are really enjoying it, and I'm glad that I did it.
Well, I'm glad you came to Ojai Toastmasters. If you want to hear more about stories, come to Ojai Valley Toastmasters.
Thank you, Leticia.